Hello and welcome, Flames of War fans. This is part of the online campaign game. This is my second game doing this. The scenario is Rear Guard. This is a German Grenadier company with some support, and they are basically the Rear Guard against a combination US Rifle Company and an M4 Sherman company. Neither of them are regulars. So let's just take a quick look at our setup here. For the Germans, we have some 105mm artillery. There's one of the American objectives with a 75mm gun and a German platoon with 2 heavy machine guns as backup. We also have an 81mm mortar platoon here. On a hill not so far away, we have another rifle platoon that's dug in with some heavy machine gun support. We also have another platoon here dug in supporting the anti-tank gun here with the second objective that is a ranged in marker for the Americans. Over here we have one German Panzer III that is acting as the observer for our artillery or mortars, depending. And then we have another 75mm gun here. Now, I chose the pack front for the 75mm AT guns, and that allows them to deploy as independent units, which is wonderful. That allows me to spread. This is one of the minefields that the Germans get. If I look over here, on the other side, I deployed the other minefield out here at the entrance to this field. So the Americans do not have easy and immediate access. Okay. Now, if we're looking at the other side of the game, the other side of the table, I said we have a combination of American rifles and M4s. But before I get there, I gotta point something out. The Germans also happen to have some support from the Fallschirmjäger in the form of Stugs. So that's going to be interesting. For the Americans, wow. So I have one rifle platoon here with 2 light machine guns, 1 heavy machine gun. I have a second rifle platoon. Okay, again, 1 light machine gun, 1 heavy machine gun, and I got a platoon of Shermans in the back. They're M4s. Over here, I've got the American 81mm mortars. Okay. Over here, I have these here. So I have the M476 tank platoon. I have the M7 Priest platoon that's based off of taking the Ivy command card, because this will be the 4th Infantry Division. And I have another platoon here that has a light machine gun and a heavy machine gun. So, have the Americans done anything serious in terms of, well, the Americans did range in not only on that hill here, but they also ranged on the top of this hill here. Okay. The Germans ranged in on the rubble of Sept Frere. So that's the basics of this game with the objective. Really simple. The Germans have to hold out and the Americans have to grab. That's it. Catch you on the flip side. Here we are at the end of American turn 1, since the Americans get to go first because they are the attacker. I had the 2 infantry platoons move up to the woods here, move up here, and next turn they're going to go into the rubble. Meanwhile, the Shermans also moved up because the idea is to open fire on these guys, which one of the M7 priests was able to spot, and they pinned the guys. That's it. Now understand that that AT gun there is a pack nest, as is this one over here, and that is a minefield. Okay, so this is going to get ugly. On this side, we add the American infantry and the Shermans move up. This Sherman failed its cross test. This Sherman went in, no problem. These guys have moved up into the forests. Possibly, maybe next turn, they might engage those guys over there. We will have to see. And that's it, Battlefront fans, for American Turn 1. Okay, Battlefront fans, here we are at the end of German Turn 1. And it's been a bit of a struggle here, a bit of a fight. First blood drawn. The infantry platoon rallied from being pinned from the artillery thanks to the front swine of the 352nd. Goodness gracious for that card. Unfortunately, the AT gun, well, didn't. And it fired. It hit the platoon commander's Sherman just to bail him out. The other AT gun fired and missed. Meanwhile, the prearranged artillery here, prearranged spot, hit the American platoon, pinning it and taking out two teams, a rifle team and an LMG team. Ouch! That's gotta leave a mark. Germans have not deployed their Stugs yet. Not this turn. So, we'll see what happens in the next turn. Stay tuned, Battlefront fans. So here we are at the American end of turn 2. The white platoon stays where it is. One of the Sherman tanks moved up. The red platoon moves forward, takes cover in the rubble, and they did start shooting at those guys there. No effect. The Shermans here fired on the 75mm gun. It's hard to take that out. Wow, what can I say? In other exciting news, the 76th Sherman platoon, one guy moved in, one guy failed to cross, the other two are just hanging out, not doing anything. The blue platoon, on the other hand, they have been doing something. They've been moving forward. They started to engage the rifle platoon across the road, but it was American mortar fire that pinned them down as the platoon commander got whacked. No harm done, though. And that's it. The Germans only gain a delay counter this time around, ladies and gentlemen. But, man, I tell you, strategic withdrawal time, this is where things are going to get brutal. All right, catch you on the flip side. So here we are at the end of German Turn 2, or bottom half of Turn 2, if you will. The Germans did not do any movement except this AT gun and infantry platoon recovered from their pin, and they brought the pain down, taking out a couple of Shermans with the help of that AT gun as well. Meanwhile, the mortars and German artillery did some work pinning these guys again. The mortar ended up resulting in a loss of a stand here and pinning these guys. Mortars, I should say. This Grenadier platoon fired in a pin state on these guys here and were able to take out one stand. That's it. But I think next turn the Germans are going to have to start pulling back because the Americans are going to continue bringing the pressure. This is not over, folks. Stay tuned. So here we are. We've just concluded the American half of turn 3, the top of turn 3. There has been some moving and shooting. The white platoon here moved forward, taking cover in the rubble. Okay. And over here, the red platoon moved further up because they want to take care of that AT gun. These guys remained where they were. Well, this guy moved up. This guy fired on the AT gun there on the hill, but it's in a nest, and it's really difficult to get out. The Shermans here, what was left of them, fired on the AT gun over there and missed. Astoundingly, with 4 dice, they missed. Meanwhile, artillery rained. The 105s rained on there, just pinning, that's it. And the German infantry platoon lost a stand. Over here, the mortar point was called off to go on here and pin those guys. That was it. Over here, our light machine gun and heavy machine gun, they moved into this barn. It's not that they're in front, but they are inside. And they gave these guys some interesting shots. Nothing. Meanwhile, I got a Sherman that moved out and kind of dithered on what to do next. These other Shermans behind, well, they're not crossing the woods very well. And at this point now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be at the bottom half of turn 3, and the Germans, I think, are going to have to pull something back. Stay tuned. Here we go for the bottom half of German turn 3. No movement except the 105 millimeter artillery guys. They pulled out. They were the first unit to withdraw. This pin platoon fired on here, no effect. The AT guns decided to fire on the infantry here and not the Sherman tanks. They ignored that. No hits. The mortars fired on the red platoon, no effect. That's it, folks. Stay tuned. Okay, the end of the top of turn 4, the American turn. Lot of things happening here. Let's start over here. Our Sherman HQ started to move through. One got bogged trying to cross the woods. The other got into the woods but couldn't move any further. The other M476 got into the woods, worked his way through, couldn't get out. Meanwhile, the 3 Shermans here fired to add some pain to these guys over here. No kills. The other one fought here. No kills. These guys fired on these guys here. No kills. It's just not been very eventful, except the artillery went and suppressed, pinned these guys down. So really the big thing that has been happening here. Let's see. Yeah, these Shermans tried to fire on the OP Panzer III and got nothing. They all missed. The main action happened here with the red platoon. They decided to go forward, go into the house, take out the German AT nest. And really the German AT nest couldn't do anything to stop that. They consolidated back into the house for cover. Bazooka team is at the forefront. So this is brutal. This is happening, folks. Let's see what'll happen on the German half of turn 4. Okay, here we are at the end of German turn 4. AT gun fired on the Sherman platoon, bailed out the platoon commander's tank. The mortars, German mortars, thanks to the OP tank, went here and pinned these guys down. German machine guns fired on here, resulting in the loss of 1 stand and pinning the red platoon. Over here, the red German platoon fired, hit, no effect. That's it. So now we're going to the top of turn 5. It's coming down, folks. It's coming down. More action here at the American half of turn 5, the top of turn 5. Oh my. The story behind this Panzer III observation tank. It was over in the woods here, but the Americans, well, last turn they blew away the German AT gun. They went after the tank. The tank retreated. It broke off. It retreated. And now everybody along the entire line here is pinned. The American armored units move forward, spraying fire, opening up. It's not looking good. Meanwhile, the American tank HQ, the commander keeps getting bogged. Everybody else is gathering together. We still have our 2 tank platoon. That guy's still bailed out. Imagine that. But he has survived the last stand. So, stay tuned for the German part of turn 5. We got to see if the Germans have to pull back any units. More action shortly. So here we are at the end of German turn 5. AT gun has not been able to rally. They fired off a shot here, hit the Sherman, no effect ultimately. These guys fired on the white platoon, the white platoon loses a stand. I'm going to put the tree back up here. The red platoon fires on these guys. They took out 2 stands. The Stugs have shown up at long last, went down the road, fired on the M476 Sherman and bailed him out. The red platoon also took out the heavy machine gun. Ouch. Very much an ouch. So, that's it. It is winding. It's winding down, guys. So we'll see what happens for American turn 6. Okay, so here we are at the end of American turn 6. I'm reminded of a quote from a movie called The Boondock Saints, where the FBI agent came into an investigating a crime scene that occurred, and what he screamed out was, "There was a firefight!" In this case, yeah, it got pretty nasty out here. So let's go on this end here. Blue platoon moved up, started firing. 81mm mortars redirected to this area, and they took out 2 stands. Not looking good. Sherman tried to fire at the Stug, missed. The Sherman moved further into the forest and didn't cross over. The M476 is moved with the idea of pelting these positions here, particularly the infantry, or in this case the OP tank. Interestingly enough, they did not knock it out. These 2 Shermans here, one split off, went a little bit further to avoid that 16-inch +1 to hit, and bailed out the OP tank. Our heavy machine gun boys were laying a steady stream of fire onto these guys here. My company commander was trying to readjust the 105mm fire, only to fail miserably. But the real heroes, who are the ones that really did the heavy work, the heavy lifting, the carrying of the water? Wait, but they were here last turn. Yeah, they moved forward and they were able in close combat to take out the AT gun and basically capture the observation tank. So what do we have left? This is it. These are the guys who are preventing the Americans from taking it this turn. This game will extend to turn 7, and the Germans are going to have to pull somebody out now. Who's it going to be? Stay tuned, Battlefront fans. Here we are at the end of turn 6. Stugs moved forward, fired on the Sherman. The American platoon commander, and he don't, no, it's not him, it's the second IC, the 2 IC blew up. The red platoon fired on these guys to no effect. Well, one stand went, because this guy fired, and he was at the white platoon. Over here's where the action's really happening. The company commander with the 2 IC and the white platoon went to go up here to throw these guys off the hill and thus contest the objective. Somewhere in there, the company commander said, "I will take you to where the iron crosses grow, Lieutenant." And they went, and they attacked. And the Americans, even our bazooka boys, fought back. And they forced them to retreat. And the Germans now are in even worse shape. The company commander is dead. The lieutenant is still alive, hoping for an Iron Cross. Meanwhile, German fire took care of these guys here. There are no support left except for that lone heavy machine gun. The red platoon is in very bad shape. So, what's going to happen in this next turn? Probably going to be the end of the game at this point, folks. So, let's see what happens. And now a word from our sponsor. Hi, are you tired of playing Warhammer 40K? With the same old Space Marines and the same old chaos, fighting against each other over some forsaken landscape? Would you like to add a little more history to your games? Look no further than Flames of War. Today's game was made possible by the Flames of War rules, as well as the American sourcebook for D-Day and the German sourcebook for D-Day. In here, packed in here, you have got rich detailed maps. You have got all kinds of information on the units that were actually there. Not some pink-coated Space Marine or some green-coated gobs of glue, whatever, for the chaos. Here it gives you information. It also has, on command cards, sold separately, real people who actually were there and actually fought, whether they were heroes or not. Anyways, give Flames of War a try. www.flamesofwar.com. And now back to your regularly scheduled game. Well, guys, here it is. The American half of turn 7. The game is over. On here is the last remaining things as our M476s were going up, opening up on these guys, and the red platoon started shooting at them, pinning them, and then going close combat. The bazooka team single-handedly took out one of the stands there, and then the red platoon went in for the final thing, and they took them out. Game over. The Germans lost one platoon, the white platoon, and they lost their HQ formation. So much for the Iron Cross, Lieutenant. Meanwhile, these guys and these guys fired, and they kept the Germans busy. They're now pulling back. This game is now over. Kudos has to go definitely to everybody, but the real kudos needs to go to the red platoon here. You know, and you think they started out there and they worked their way up, and they ended up taking the AT gun and nest out. Then they came over and they captured the OP tank. Then they took out the second AT gun nest. And then after that, despite the counterattack by the German HQ formation, they took that on, they absorbed it, and that was the end of it, folks. It's all over. The battle is done. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this, ladies and gentlemen. It was a massive victory. The Americans did not lose any units, but they were pretty close. All right, that's it. Till next time, Flames of War fans.